From the Heartland Business and Event Center, nestled in vibrant downtown Jesup.
Can you feel it vibrating, Dan?
It's vibrating.
All right.
Welcome to the Bohemian Network alongside producer Blake Tempus, co-host Dale Rueber. I'm Jim Gillespie, and this is the Jesup News. We call it the Jesup News, although it's Buchanan County News.
We're branching out, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
We've been to Delaware County.
We have.
Yes, we're really branching.
May 11th, 2026. Also, check out the podcast, What Is Up, with our friend Bubba Seaman. On that podcast, they talk about everything with everyone. Nothing is off the table, discussing real life with the real people, the good, the bad, and the highs and the lows, and everything funny in between. It's an interesting yet entertaining podcast with real people talking about what is up. Today, we're joined by someone whose fingerprints are quietly pressed into nearly every wild corner of Buchanan County, retired conservationist Dan Cohen. He spent decades tending to the prairies, river woodlands, and wildlife that defined Buchanan County, not as a distant steward, but as a neighbor, a teacher, and a patient listener to the land itself. His career with Buchanan County Conservation helped shape parks, trails, and habitats that thousands of people now move through without ever realizing the depth of care behind them. Dan is one of the more rare conservationists who blends science with story. You can talk wetlands and watershed management. He might even talk politics with Dale tonight.
And if he doesn't know, he just makes it up.
Then pivot to the history of a single oak tree or a way a child's first encounter with a salamander can change a life. His work has always been about more than ecology. It's been about belonging, about people understanding that land is not just scenery but community. Dan, we're honored to have you with us tonight.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was quite an introduction. I'll have to live up to that.
Thank you. Many of your friends have said, you got to have Dan on, and finally got a chance to get you on. So.
Well, great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, I first met you. You were the naturalist at Buchanan County from out of Fontana.
That's right.
And you came up to Jesup and you're doing classes with the kids and everything. And I know they said you're going to put name tags on your kids. He'll figure it out. And he came in, he's okay, you red shirt boy, what do you think? And you green shoes. And so he did really, really well. And I must say, I grew up in Hazleton, so I knew Fontana when it was nothing. It was privately owned. What you did with that over the years you were there, you and Harry, is just fantastic. It's a model, I think, of what a small county like this, small population, can do with limited resources, but it's just fantastic. And then all the places we've added over the years, county property that you guys have helped develop. So just a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
And I remember you've been published. I used to read. You used to be published in the Des Moines Register and some other magazines. Were you in like Iowa Conservation Magazine or something? Mm-hmm. And very well thought of, not just in Buchanan County, but throughout the state, and did a wonderful job. And I have to tell you, when you quit being the naturalist and became the director, is that what it's called? And so another naturalist was hired, and I won't say any name, but the first time she was in Jesup, she was with the first grade, and she was doing something, and trying to be helpful, this first grade, she said, well, Dan, when he was here, always did this, which you should never do, everybody knows that. But he said it anyway, and she said, I'm not Dan Cohen. So he still tells that story. He said, I don't think she ever liked me. And now she is retired too, so it was just a funny story, I think. But before we get, I know you have a lot of different things to talk about, but you watch the legislature and you watch what they do and basically what they don't do. And what is it that really hits you the hardest?
Well, I think in the last few years, actually the last 15 years, there's been quite a bit of not listening to what Iowans really want, is what I'm seeing. It doesn't seem like we're being represented a lot, especially those of us who care about nature and outdoors, and we would like our legislators to do more in that regard. Right now, there's lots of challenges that we hear about every day that don't seem to be getting addressed. We obviously have this water quality issue throughout the state. We can't even get legislators to properly monitor our rivers and streams right now, and pay for that monitoring. Probably the biggest thing that I've been involved with was the Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, which was approved by Iowans in 2010 and is still sitting empty, not funded by the legislature. This was It was actually put on the ballot in 2010, and a supermajority of Iowans voted to create the trust fund. More people voted for that than voted for the governor at the time or any statewide elected office. So it was very popular, but it just is not being funded. And we've been trying to do that now for going on 16 years. But that project would finally be a game changer for Iowa and Iowans as far as water quality and our parks and outdoor recreation areas that we all need and enjoy.
Well, does it seem it seems to me they were testing the water. They had a system set up, testing water in different parts of the state, and they found that it was full of nitrates and this sort of thing. And so instead of working to clean up the water, they said, well, we're not going to test anymore because we don't like this bad news. Is that what it appears like to you?
Yeah, I think definitely for some legislators, there are some champions at the Capitol. Most of them don't have power right now. But yes, it does appear that they don't like the news headlines too much, and testing water is going to produce more headlines. I can't say for sure that's why they defunded that program, but it does seem that could be a possibility.
Now, I was going to ask you also. This is a cattle enclosure, or I call it manure farm, in northeast Iowa near a pristine trout stream, right? Mm-hmm. And it took a state senator's son-in-law is one of the owners up there of that, and the state senator helped get that through so he could build it up there. Have they tested that water in that stream? Is that stream doing okay, or is it?
I really don't know. Yeah,
okay.
I haven't. I don't know. I have information on that particular project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just there's lots and lots of places you could build one of those places. You didn't have to be up in northeast Iowa where you have this valuable resource in northern part of the state. Do we have anything like that?
What stream is that on?
I can't. I should.
Is that Bloody Run?
Bloody Run, I think it is. Yeah.
That's got a karst, what they call a karst topography. So it's fractured limestone. So anything that's put on the ground, there's fissures in that broken limestone that it can actually get into groundwater and drinking water very easily, or make its way into rivers and streams. Mm-hmm. And you got some very high quality trout streams in that area that we don't want to get polluted. Not that we want other rivers to be polluted either, but those rivers currently are in pretty good shape, so we don't want to see them.
Well, there's even trout that are reproducing naturally, right? That don't have to be stopped up there because the water is so good.
Right, and it takes clean water.
In what areas of Iowa are there wild trout, Dale?
The only place in Iowa, I believe, that there's reproducing populations of trout is northeast Iowa in those cold water trout streams. Yeah. Again, that's not my field of expertise, but that's my understanding. And they need to be protected. We have the Wapsipinicon River here in Buchanan County, and for an interior river of its size, it's one of the best rivers, if not the best river in the state of a river its size. But it still has its problems, and needs to be protected as well.
In the summer after a rain, I mean, it's just brown. I mean, it's as brown as brown can be, and that's all that silt that's being washed in still. And it seems to me like why they can't be a buffer area along both sides of that river. Why that can't happen, I don't understand that. But it's very sad. Yeah,
they mandated it in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. The law is you have to buffer your rivers and creeks, but in Iowa, the politics have been such that there's not anybody proposing that right now.
Yeah.
Dan, we sort of put the cart before the horse a little bit here, but how did you get into conservation environmentalism? How did it all start for you?
Well, I always enjoyed being outdoors and kicking around in areas. I actually grew up in a suburb of Chicago, Deerfield, north suburb.
Okay.
Yep. But we had right behind our school, we had a wild area with a wetland and a marsh and lots of hiking trails. And I'd spent a lot of time and really put together an ethic about the land and wanted to see it protected. And when I started looking at places to go to college, I wanted to study that more. Iowa State University is one of the best colleges in the nation, and I ended up at Iowa State. And then I've been in the area since then, so that's what brought me in. I also wanted I had an emphasis in journalism from the start as well, and so I've always been writing, and I kind of paired the two up when I was a naturalist and the director. All those years, the 38 years I was with the conservation department, I was always doing some writing. And about 5 years ago, I or 6 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, I added photography, and so I've been kind of melding the natural resources and the writing and the photography lately. So
how'd you get to Buchanan County then? Did you right out of school?
yeah, coming out of school, I didn't have a penny to my name.
Yeah.
I had an old Pontiac car that was rusted out in 90% of it and could barely get it down the road. And I got a job offer right out of school in New Mexico for $1 a day in a national park and 60 miles from the nearest grocery store. And I couldn't even get the gas money if I were to take that job to eat. And so I ended up getting a few offers, but came to Buchanan County and started there as a naturalist. And started with creating the environmental education program for the county.
Mm-hmm. You would have graduated about the same time I did from college. Were there a lot of jobs in your profession out there?
No, there was not. And there were hardly any naturalists at the time. I would guess maybe a dozen in the state. There weren't very many jobs for naturalists, so I was fortunate to get one. The pay was pretty lousy, but it's the way to get it started, and the county conservation board system was the system to go to. Maybe only a dozen naturalists, but they were all working for counties. The state has never really had a vigorous naturalist program or environmental education outreach program. It's always been the counties. That kind of turned around a little bit later. So I hired in January of '86, and then in '89, the Iowa legislature passed the REAP program, Resource Enhancement and Protection, which provided at least a small amount of money to county conservation boards, and a lot of the conservation boards then started dedicating some of those funds to hiring naturalists. So in the early 90s, we kind of saw a boom in Iowa in counties getting naturalists and doing educational programs locally.
Buchanan County was right at the front of that. I mean, they were one of the first ones to get going, right?
We were.
Yeah.
Perry Graves, the director at the time, had a vision of having a strong education program, and started at first trying to do some things part-time and tried to do some things himself, and in the end realized that it would take a full-time position, and then we've built on it since then.
As your reputation grew, you published, and you were there quite some time, developed these programs. How you say this without embarrassing everybody? Anybody come around and say, would you like to work at a bigger county or another state or anything like that? Or does that kind of thing happen? Or
yeah, there was opportunities if I wanted to go to a larger county. I was really happy and settled in the area. I got married, I had kids, and I was grounded, and so basically stayed around. I did make the change in position in 2000. It was kind of a transition period from 1999 to 2000, and became the director. But I stayed in Buchanan County the whole time.
Well, we're glad you did.
Yeah. So let's say hi to him before we go on. What's your wife's name? What are your children's names? Here, let's say hi to everybody here.
My wife is Mickey. Mickey Sand was her maiden name.
She a local from the area?
She's from the area, from the Independence, Raleigh area. Okay. And she was a teacher at Raleigh and then at Independence, teaching first grade. She's retired now as well.
And she paid the bills, didn't she? And had insurance, and so that's good.
And she was actually a second marriage. I've got 2 children from my first marriage who are in the Owine area. One's in Owine and one's in Des Moines now. Okay. And then I've got a couple of grandchildren. And then she had two kids also. One's in Center Point and one's in California, actually. Okay. And 2 grandsons there. So,
all right.
Yep.
It keeps you busy.
Yep. Yeah. You got into Buchanan County and Harry Graves, working with Harry Graves. Between you and Harry, what was one of your biggest success stories?
Probably the largest one was the adding of the nature center at Fontana Park. When we started, the wildlife display is also very popular there. And during my naturalist time, early naturalist time, actually we built the nature center from 1992 to 1994. And it was quite an accomplishment at a time where there wasn't very many funding sources. And we tried to pay for it all so we would have no loans. So we built that project, and at that time there weren't very many nature centers in the state. So again, we realized, and Harry had realized before that the cart can't come before the horse. You need to have a good education. Is really about people, something that surely both of you know from being teachers. It's really about people, and you really need to have a vigorous education program established first, and then you have backing of the public and the desire and demand for a nature center building. And so that's what we did. So that was a big accomplishment in my naturalist years. We won several awards right away too, statewide awards, which was great and gave us a little bit more standing. So I also served as the president of some of the state organizations and kind of built that up. And the switch to being a director then allowed me to do more as far as trying to save and protect a lot of public lands in the areas and parks, and do more in that regard too. So.
What year was, if you remember, we had the big flood where it just washed everything out around the dam?
Yep, that was the 99 flood.
Okay, and so I thought what you guys did when you got to redo it turned out just really, really well. It just looks like it's worked ever since.
Yeah.
And having an old bypass there.
Yeah.
And doing some work with the dam over there. I said, was that a funding problem?
That was mostly funded through FEMA, because that was a natural disaster. And the dam routing around the shelter house was a mitigation to stop from future horrid floods that would continue to do the same thing. And that did all work out. We haven't had a major collapse of anything since then. So, that was actually the transition period. So when Harry left, I got that project put on my plate to finish up.
Sure.
And it was quite a project.
Yeah, that was unbelievable what that water did, that high water. Have you ever seen a picture? I keep asking people this, and they say, I never. But years ago when I was a kid, the man who owned that area opened up the dam. He was upset about something, but he opened up the dam and drained the lake and planted corn down in there alongside the little stream coming through. Have you ever seen a picture of that or know anything about it? Or
I haven't seen a photo. I've heard of that, but I haven't seen a photo of the crops down in there.
Well, good. Somebody finally verified my memory.
You don't know who owned that land?
I have no idea.
You know who owned that land before?
I'd have to go back and look. I can't. I don't. Yeah.
But they.
I'm sure somebody's going to hear this and they're going to know right away.
Well, sure. You built that shelter half on the foundation of the old mill too, which I thought, that's been real handy. The other bad thing is you can't, if you want to have a class in there, you can't hear very well because of the water going over.
Which was one reason for the nature center.
Oh, sure.
It was really hard to do any kind of.
Yeah.
That was our only sheltered spot large enough for a good sized group.
Yeah.
To do a slide program back then.
Yeah.
And or to do just a vocal presentation competing with the dam. And so the nature center provided us with the downstairs meeting room.
Yeah. But that shelter got a lot of use.
Yes, it does.
And even in the wintertime, you could ice skate and had the barrel stove in there, and so it was a great place to go.
Yeah,
so.
Still is. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it is. Yeah. I'm not 15 anymore.
So, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back. We're with Dan Cohen. This is the Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. All right, the Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. We're back with Dan Cohen. Dan, you spoke earlier about writing and photography and stuff. Let's talk about your writing. You've written for the Des Moines Register for a while here. Tell us about some of your writing.
Well, I've done some op-ed work that have been published in Des Moines Register and Cedar Rapids Gazette, and then I've also done some writing for some nature magazines, Iowa Conservationist, and
Were you
the Iowa magazine. Pardon me?
Did you have an article in Our Iowa, that magazine?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't do Our Iowa. But basically, I've been doing some of this consultant work, contract work all along. When I retired a couple years ago, I kind of melded it all together. I call it now Nature Communications is the business name I use, and I do a little bit of everything. My card basically breaks out the writing, the photography, the advocacy, and also reconnaissance work. So For quite some time, I was paddling Iowa rivers, and I paddled. My last job was about 208 miles of the Little Sioux River in western Iowa, but I did other sections of river as well. I subcontracted at first with Jim Pease. Some of you might know Jim Pease.
Yeah.
He was also doing that kind of work, and we were doing it for the DNR Water Trails program. So I would paddle the rivers, take photographs, identify the wildlife, the different birds I'm hearing, the different animals I'm seeing, look at the river conditions, the banks, the floor of the river, look at the portages, if you had to get out and portage, look at the accesses and rate them, and then provide reports to the DNR on that, all that information, and provide them with all the photos. So that's the reconnaissance, what I mean by reconnaissance work. We also entailed doing a lot of GPS marking of different sites and places where rare things were sighted. And I still am available to do that kind of work for land trails or water trails if there's a community that wants somebody to come in and kind of identify what the key features are and what they might want to interpret if it's a park, if they want an interpretive sign or panel somewhere, what the accesses need for being fixed up. So I do some of that work. Lately, I've been doing more of the writing and photography and advocacies. So 2 issues I've been doing advocacy for is the trust fund that we started to talk about a little bit. Mm-hmm. I've been working with our state association of county conservation boards, and I developed a PowerPoint program for them to use to educate their own staff, but also to help them communicate about the trust with legislators and with the general public. And so I've been doing some work with that, and I wrote some op-eds that you were asking about earlier, and had those in the Des Moines Register and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. The other advocacy work I've been doing is I got contacted by the Save the Boundary Waters group. Some of you may be aware, but a ridiculous situation occurred where there's a copper sulfide ore mining that was looking to develop right in the headwaters of Iowa's most popular wilderness area, which is the Boundary Waters of northeast Minnesota. We don't have any wilderness at all in Iowa. So that's where people go. If you want a wilderness experience and you want to paddle and portage and see what real wilderness is, that's where Iowans go. So we were asked to kind of speak up for Iowans in that regard. This type of mining, you might know that mining exists in Minnesota right now. There's lots of mining, and this isn't that. This is a totally different kind of mining, which is very, very toxic and has always polluted everywhere it's been done. So that was some of the advocacy I worked on. I wrote some pieces on that. Again, they were published on in those newspapers, as well as on a Substack that I have, and tried to get that out, and on lots of social media pages. But that was some of the work I've been working on. That battle was lost. It was pretty amazing. We're talking about a foreign company owned by a Chilean billionaire to get product to ship to China. So absolutely no benefit to anybody in Iowa. Yet every one of our congressional delegates in the House of Representatives and in the Senate voted to allow it to happen.
Yeah.
So we're still fighting that battle. We're seeing if there's some things that can be done to stop the mine from opening up. But that was one piece of advocacy and what I did op-ed work for.
Well, let's go back, because you brought it up. The money that the people voted for, the 3/8 of a cent, what year was that ballot that people voted for that money to be set aside?
That was 2010.
Okay.
So November of 2010, and I think it was 63% of Iowans voted to change the Iowa Constitution and create this trust fund so it's constitutionally protected.
And was that on sales tax? Is that where it would have been collected? Or okay.
So in Iowa, the citizens by referendum cannot initiate the tax. You might know that Minnesota has a similar program. The state of Missouri has a similar program. In those states, they were able to initiate the tax. In Iowa, only the legislature and the governor can initiate a tax. The idea was that once there was an overwhelming vote and a demand from the public, that our legislators would go ahead and fractionally raise that sales tax. But that did not happen, and it still has not happened. And we've had several different tax overhauls during those years. We seemed like we were getting close to maybe making that part of it, but the last time we were close was when COVID hit. and that sidetracked everything. And we still haven't got that funded. So the Iowans who wanted this are not seeing the benefits.
How much money is in there, Dan? Do you know? Or
the amount of money is zero because they haven't initiated. The funding kicks in once the sales tax is raised. So we need that 3/8 of a cent raise, and then it kicks in automatically, and then it starts dispersing money. Had they done that right away, we would have invested probably around $2 billion into solving our water quality crisis, into building up our park systems and our outdoor recreation areas, getting Iowans healthy, and all the things that go along with that. Investing in our farmers to do the work they need to do. Getting rural communities invigorated because. Buchanan County doesn't have a major league baseball stadium, but we do have the Wapsipinicon River, and there's lots of things we can do to make these things more accessible and make Iowans more healthy and be able to go out and hunt, fish, and do what they want to do, and set that up for future generations of Iowans to come. So we've missed out on that, and it's still there though. We just need to win one time, and then it'll kick in.
Have you ever asked someone in government why they didn't vote to start taxing that money again? Is it just because it's a tax and they refuse to do it, or?
Yeah, I mean they've been the ones who have been interested in it the most have always tried to do it as a combination with something else. So at first was, how do we fund mental health? Well, maybe we can do a raise in sales tax. A percentage will go to mental health and a percentage goes to the trust fund. Or, we'll reduce income taxes, but we'll increase the sales tax. Or, they've tried to do some kind of grandiose way of putting it together instead of just biting the bullet and say, let's just do the 3/8 of a cent. If you go up to Minnesota and you buy something, you'll see your receipt comes back and the tax will say, whatever it is in Minnesota, I think it's 8, and then it'll be 0.385%. So you see that 0.385% that everybody's chipping in for cleaner water, better wildlife, better outdoor recreation, and it's popular. Like in Missouri, they vote on it again every.
Well, both those states have a lot of tourism that comes with outdoor activities.
Sure.
And so it would be like instead of 7% for every dollar, it'd be 7 3/8 cents. So hardly noticeable.
Right.
Still, it would add up to $2 billion, and
it would be about about a little over $200 million a year.
Yeah.
So
wow, and that's something.
Yeah.
And I was going to say last year, like the people of Jesup voted to tax themselves to support the library. It was called the library levy, and we got that vote. We got it passed, and then I think it was not this year, but last year, the legislature. Well, you can't do that anymore. You can't. And we said, well, we wanted to do that. Well, they don't allow that anymore. So I just, I don't know. It's very frustrating. I can see, you're frustrated. It's very frustrating when, the people they want to do something better for their community or for their state, and a few people, for reasons of their own, decide not to let us do it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I mean, you guys both understand, it's like the lotto. The lotto was set up for educational purposes. The problem, so what a wonderful idea until they take only a certain portion of that lotto for educational purposes, and the rest of it goes for other reasons.
Yeah, which is why we went this route. So this was planned over a 4-year period, and I was able to, at that time, I was the president of the Iowa Association of County Conservation Boards, so I represented the counties at the table, but there was people there from Farmers Union, Farm Bureau, Soybean Association, Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, the Nature Conservancy. It was a big group. So there was 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 2 from the Senate, 2 from the House, and this plan was all put together. And to your point, we didn't want the money we wanted voters to know that if they voted for this, it would be safe. It wouldn't go to something else like the lottery money has. So that's why it's in the Constitution. It requires, the language in the Constitution states that the money can only be used for the specific purposes to fund, I think there's 6 areas that the money must be spent on, and nothing else. So it's protected by the Iowa Constitution, and the only way to reverse that would be to go back and
redo which is hard to do.
Which is hard to do.
So that takes two votes in 2 years, basically.
And what, 3/4 maybe?
Yeah.
No, you have to have a majority. So you have to has to pass 2 different sessions of the legislature,
And then the people vote.
and then the people vote,
okay.
and then it has to be a majority.
Yeah.
But of course, we had a supermajority vote in Iowa
Sure.
that wanted it.
Yeah.
So, Dan, besides that, what is one other main issue in Iowa, conservation-wise, that needs to be worked on? If you had a major wish, and you wish the legislation would take place.
I really think, and it's not all legislative, but it's attitude too, but we need to make sure that our public lands are protected, and that we, right now, Iowa is one of the lowest states. Iowans have the lowest percentage of land available to them for outdoor recreation compared to other states in the country. And there's always this battle with some special interest groups that want to stop us from acquiring or expanding even the properties that are managed for Iowans to enjoy. It's unfortunate. The bulk of Iowans don't like it. They want this stuff. There's really high demand. And so, I guess if I had a wish, it would be that our people in the legislature, our big ag industry people, others would just get behind the fact that we need to strategically protect and enhance the public lands that Iowans enjoy and need to have. And if I meet with a group of farmers, they all enjoy. The farmers, their kids are out there, enjoying hiking and hunting and fishing and using those grounds and having clean water. It's really a thing where the emphasis is coming from big industry leaders who are somehow justifying getting rid of a lot of public land. So we have to be very careful there.
But it's even on the federal level. There's a problem, like we got all these billionaires who would love to buy Yellowstone National Park or buy the Grand Canyon to use as a garbage dumpers. They would do it if they could make money. And so we have to watch out for our federal lands because you just can't trust them.
There's some great quotes, especially from Teddy Roosevelt back. Teddy was one of the early pioneers of conservation and public lands. And he warned strongly about private interests and greedy people stealing away our heritage, our history, our romance, our natural beauty that even he saw, in the early 1900s starting to happen. And it's really sad at the federal level right now seeing a lot of that being lost. The boundary waters that we talked about earlier is a good example of that.
See, that should never happen.
No. No, that was actually established by Teddy Roosevelt. The Superior National.
And that should never happen if they allow those people to go in there.
Yeah.
We've got time for one more topic this second half. What would you say is a problem coming our way with like the talk is of mining heat from Fayette County over to Blackhawk County, so we're right in between them. So it's coming our way.
What's that? This coming?
The mining of helium and hydrogen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I'm not.
Do you know much about that?
I don't. I don't.
They see a lot of it up in Fayette County, and if it's in Fayette County, they want to pipe it, sort of like they want to pipe the
CO2.
The CO2 through our county as well, through that same pipeline or that pipe area.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I know that the eminent domain issue did not get resolved again this year. And I don't know. I've heard of mining for helium and hydrogen, but I didn't realize there was plans to come right through our area with that.
They say it's they claim it's 10 years away, but as fast as things are moving, it's sort of like the AI, the water for AI, the power companies for AI. They're talking of opening the nuclear plant, next door, and they got to have water for that. What's going to happen to that? What's going to happen to that lake?
Well, the lake, I think Palo Lake, wasn't that developed as a reservoir for the nuclear power plant?
I think so.
Yeah. Or it's an I think it's an emergency water cooling station. If something were to happen, they could divert, they could flood it.
Yeah.
But again, that's not
Right.
that's not my area of expertise.
Right.
I can't really.
Have you talked with anyone about there being a connection between Iowa's dirty water and the high rate of cancer we have in the state?
Yeah, there's more and more evidence for that, and I've got a few links on some articles I've written on my Substack to that research. The Iowa Environmental Council recently took a lot of the research together and developed a report on that, and that's available online. If you want to Google it, you can do a report on water quality and cancer, and it'll probably pop right up.
Let's hold you up there a little bit. Show everybody your Substack here, and so that Blake can get that up for him. And that's how you get to Dan's Substack. Tell them how they get there, Dan.
It's just go ahead. The web address is dwcohen81.substack.com. But you can get on there. You can try it out. You can subscribe for free if you like. Check out the articles and the photos. Then if you want to do a paid subscription, you can. I don't make anybody do it, so you can just continue to do it for free. But if you like what you see and you want to support the work, you can do a subscription. If you do subscribe, I do give discounts on print orders and the use of digital photography. And I got some photos up here. And
we're going to show those the third half.
Yep. Okay.
So all right.
Yep.
So
that's my Substack.
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back after this break to the Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network with Dan Cohen. The Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. We're back with Dan Cohen. Dan, you brought some art with you tonight.
Sure.
We're all about art. That looks really good.
This is an art center, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So,
what'd you bring with you?
So I just brought a few prints. I've got quite a few more in my tote, but just a little smattering of some of the photography work I've been doing. So on the far left, there's one of the campsites in the Boundary Waters, a small photo there, and some of the other photos. We got a Northern Flicker. This photo was actually in the calendar of the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation one year.
Okay.
Some trumpeter swans. That's on the Wapsipinicon River between here and Independence, actually, and it's right after ice out, so the trumpeter swans are going in the water. Kind of pilgrimage places to go to is the Sandhill crane migration in central Nebraska, and so we got a picture there at sunrise of the cranes lifting off the water. So that's kind of a
in Buchanan County, Fontana, or the conservation where they have it. That trip goes every spring, doesn't it? To the
not
the
every spring.
I think near every spring.
I think they were doing it every other year.
Okay.
And because on the off year they were going to the Wolf Center up in northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're doing it every other year still, or if it's every 3 years now. But
we went on it one year.
It was a fun trip.
We went to the Wolf Center just on our own one time, which is a neat place up in Ely. Is it Ely?
That's Ely. Yeah.
Yeah, in Minnesota. And they have a bear center there too, which is nice.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. But the trumpeter swans, I always have there's a book called The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web. And I used to read that to my kids in school. And it's about a trumpeter swan who can't talk, so he learns how to play the trumpet. Real story. But it's a great book. And so, and I've had kids who are adults come and tell me that they remember that story and they learned about swans from that book. So I always know that trumpeter swan have the black bill and the black feet. So that's the only one I know. But
they're a success story in Iowa. So they were basically pretty much gone from the state. They started reintroducing them in Wisconsin at first, and maybe Minnesota, and then Iowa put together a program to reintroduce swans, and so we got swans again in Iowa.
Boy, the wild turkey program has been a huge success in the state.
It sure has been, yeah.
Unbelievable how many you see.
When that started up, it was they couldn't figure out how to get turkeys to survive and stay in Iowa until they came across the right type of turkey that they got. And nobody would have guessed at that time that turkeys could be in small woodlots. The idea was that they could only be in really large chunks of forest, like Shimmick or Yellow River Forest. And now we find that they can be in a little corner woodlot with a few acres.
Oh yeah.
The pheasants are back.
Yeah, they are.
Pheasants are doing well.
Yeah, and I tell you, here's a challenge for you guys. I can remember the first eagle that I've ever seen, and I'd have been a 19-year-old sophomore in college.
You're talking about wild eagles. Yeah.
Wild bald
Yeah.
eagle.
Yeah.
Did you remember the first eagle that you saw in Iowa?
I remember they were very rare, and we used to go to the Mississippi River in wintertime to try to see one.
Yeah.
But I knew people that went to Alaska, and that was one of their chief things for going up there was to see
That
wild
was me. That's first
bald
time I
eagle.
saw an eagle was
Or
going
Canada.
to Alaska.
You talk about a great gift being returned to Iowa, is the
Oh,
return of the
my.
bald eagles.
We went to Guttenberg years ago, and I think we saw 4 or 5 eagles. And we went several years later, and there had to be a couple hundred of them. It was maybe just a year because the water was open, there was good fishing, but they were all over the place below the dam there. And
Yeah.
so just fantastic what they have done.
Yes,
And
it is.
All because of environmentalists.
You talk
Did
about
that.
the trip to the cranes. We used to load up vans and do a field trip when they first started coming back to the state. And you could see numerous cranes along the Mississippi. You know, we take people out there for a field day. Now you can just go to the Wapsie and see all the eagles you want to see.
Yeah, oh yeah, because there's more around. I see them almost every week just driving towards Fairbank.
Sure.
Sitting in a tree there, and also many times just going east or west out of Jesup, you see them sitting there. And so
Yeah.
somebody said there's a nest out by the 6th hole at the golf course, or at the golf course in Jesup.
Oh, really?
There's a nest out there on the golf course, and so.
And what is your greatest get as far as a photographer? What would you say are you most proud of that you may not have it with you that you got as a?
I don't know that I've got a single favorite photo. This crane one has been very popular, but I don't know that I've got a favorite one. I did just come back, a month ago. I was in Costa Rica and did a lot of photography there. Took about 8,000 images over that couple weeks period and got all kinds of interesting birds and animals. And I also like just to find the beauty around us. You know, I get a lot of photos just in my acreage at home and, just on paddling on the Wapsie or going to another river. I do a lot of photography from rivers out of the kayak. Last 10 days ago or so, I was at the Iowa Ornithologists Union state meeting, and we paddled at Sweet Marsh, and there was some interesting birds there, black-necked stilt and black-headed night heron. So, some really interesting birds, some trumpeter swans as well, and sandhill cranes. So you can find a lot right around here in Iowa, especially this time of year.
Well, Jim went to Costa Rica years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And he came back. All he talked about was the girls on the beach. He didn't mention the birds at all.
We didn't even make it to the
He
beach.
missed a big opportunity.
Yeah, I should have been looking for that.
Well, you should have
I'm
gone for
sorry,
birds.
yeah.
Sometimes you can find birds and girls.
Okay.
Well, we don't get that.
So I've heard this statistic. I've got to ask this because I love to fish the Wapsie. I heard that there were 10,000 walleye a year. Obviously fingerlings put in the Wapsie every year. Is that true?
I don't want to say how many. I don't really know, but I do know that they do stock the Wapsie, and they stock it in Independence in a couple locations and in other places up and down the Wapsie. I've been asked about this kind of recently. So the Wapsie is a great river, but and walleye were here native to Iowa and to the Wapsipinicon River, and they reproduced here, for generations before we were here. But they don't anymore to any extent. They're once in a while they'll have some maybe a little bit of natural reproduction, but pretty much all the walleye you're going to catch in the Wapsie have been stocked.
Okay.
Although the Wapsie is a pretty good river and it's really great for fishing, especially for smallmouth and for walleye and for northern pike. It's still a degraded river to some degree, and we've got enough silt and stuff in the water that there's not the type of habitat needed for natural reproduction.
And where's the hatchery where they do the walleye?
The one probably in Buchanan County would be for Manchester hatchery.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. Now we do have naturally reproducing northern pike in the Wapsie, which is very rare for other rivers in the state.
Okay.
I don't know if there are any other interior rivers that have naturally reproducing pike like the Wapsie does. That's because of the backwater wetlands, because when young pike are developing, they have to have a stage of life where they cling to wetland plants. So if all you have is a river and you don't have any backwaters where they can spread out and go into those areas, they don't do well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was listening to National Public Radio this winter, and they talked about the salmon train, is what they called it. Have you heard about that book? There's a book out there.
I do not know that book.
The government was trying to spread trout and salmon, and they would put fish in barrels on trains and ship them inland. And obviously, salmon didn't survive in Iowa.
Right.
But
Did they try it in Iowa?
yeah, they tried it in Iowa.
Okay.
They tried it in Iowa, and I wish I could remember that book. Maybe we can get Blake to see if he can look up the salmon train. Look up the salmon train.
There is a real good book on salmon in the Great Lakes and the success they've had there in introducing salmon into the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So that they're not native in the Great Lakes, they were brought there, and at first people thought they're a saltwater fish, they're never going to survive in the Great Lakes. But
did we get some of them giant Asian carp in Iowa, or have you heard of they jump in the boat and knock people out?
Actually, I was wondering about that because the Little Sioux River that I paddled recently, I didn't come across any of them. But it seems like I recall that they were pretty prolific in there maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I think we were actually at a conference there in one of those areas, and I remember seeing them. But when I paddled it in 23 and 24, I didn't come across.
I know they're trying real hard to keep them out of the Great Lakes because they just ruin the commercial fishing if they get well established. And so.
Now, I've heard Jim on National Public Radio a lot. When you guys go like paddling these different rivers, do you guys camp out a lot? Do you guys do day trips? What do you do?
The trips that I was doing for the DNR paddling, my wife would go with me, and we usually stayed. Sometimes we got a host park that would give us a night at their cabin, and we'd stay there, and then she'd drop me off, and I'd be paddling all day and have my GPS going so she can kind of see where I'm at and then pick me up. You really needed to have two people to do that work. But I've done lots of trips where we camp along the way in Iowa, but I'm also going to the Boundary Waters and other wilderness areas. Paddling and camping go together well.
Yeah. Is there anything, Dan, that Dale and I didn't ask? And maybe Dale, you have more questions.
No, I'm so glad to see him. I've known him a long time, and you should see him once a year. He would come to school, and the kids always look forward to him coming. And he did a wonderful job with that. And I think he did a wonderful job as the director. I think Buchanan County owes him a lot for the stuff that we do have. We don't have as much as we should have, but we got an awful lot more than we would have if this man hadn't been moving here from Chicago. All the Chicago people come and save us. But he's a very nice man, and you know that too. And so I'm glad you came. Thank you very much.
Before we go on, Blake, were you able to find anything on salmon trade?
No.
All right. Well, I'll have to look that up and send that to you. Dan, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. Just a few announcements here. Remember that Linda Schmidt has art at the community room at the Jesup Public Library. I was in there tonight. It's amazing. Look at the Steve Brown Arts Center Facebook page, and you'll see that art in the coming days. Remember, Mandy Betts is up at M's right now. M's is sponsoring that show. Nick Thomas has art at Gedney's, and we're looking at putting some of that art out in the wild here. We're talking to some farmers about putting it on their barns. So remember, we have the 24-hour Mustang camera sponsored by Joe's Pizza in Independence, and the Hawk camera in Manchester. Free art house located outside the superintendent's office in Independence. If you'd like to donate to the Steve Brown Arts Center or have an idea for an event, go to the SteveBrownArtsCenter.org and follow the link. And follow, please. We need all those things. If you have news or would like to sponsor us, email us at jim@SteveBrownArtsCenter.org or call 319-290-0241 and leave a message. I'm Jim Gillespie with Dale Rueber and guest Dan Cohen with producer Blake Tempus. Our thanks as always to Kelly C. Haas at Heartland Business and Event Center for allowing us to use their podcast equipment and studio. Thanks to the audience for bringing these stray dogs into your life, and remember, each day is about little victories.